Yes, yes. Peace to the family. Peace and blessings to the family. Today I got a good show, a good lecture. Um, I don't know where to start. I want to give a big shout out to Brother Maverick X. Big shout out to Maya Mia and everyone that inspired this lecture because I said it was coming. People doubted me, but it's finally here and it's the full breakdown of the Arab worship mentality that I guess people of the people of African descent have, especially when they join Islam or were born Muslim. People tend to look up to an Arab, a pale skinned Arab, for some sort of validation, especially when it comes to religion. And with religion comes culture, so they need some sort of validation from a pale skinned Arab, especially when they don't know the history, the facts, um, the lineage, the migration patterns. So I just want to clarify and hopefully dispel some confusion that especially I have in my community. Me being Somali, some Somalis say, oh, we're Arabs. Some Somalis say, no, we're black. So I just want to clarify and I guess bring you guys a presentation, a lecture of my research. And I encourage you to do your research because this is just a stepping stone, especially for those that have come into Islam and are unsure of its dogma within Islam. Maybe you're someone of African descent who's recently reverted into Islam, and you're not sure of the history and lineage and or what it means to be Arab. Hopefully, I can, yeah, like I said, dispel those thoughts. So let me share my screen and let's get into this. Yep, let's do this. So now this is the Arab worship mentality, destroying the misconception that Arab people have ownership over Islam and culture. Now let's break this down. What does the word Arab mean? We go here. What does the word Arab mean? Now, you can say it two ways. You can say it derives from Araba, which means a car or moving vehicle over here. Or you can say Arabia, just like over here. That's when it comes to the etymology. Now, ultimately, when we look at the etymology, it says the proper name Arab or Arabian and cognates in other languages has necessarily, sorry, has been used to translate several different but similar sounding words in ancient and classical texts, which do not necessarily have the same meaning or origin. So people can get the, I guess, the correct definition of Arab confused. The etymology of the term is closely linked to that of the place name Arabia. So coming back to what I was saying, um, so Gustav E. von Brom, in his book Classical Islam, said that an approximate translation is passerby or nomad, or you could say those that move around, people who migrate. So that was what the word meant. Understand? So if we get to the next point, we ask ourselves, what does it mean to be Arab? Because we knew these people moved around, and we can see closely these, it definitely originated in Africa. So let's not deny that fact. Now, how do we define it? Like, what does it mean to be Arab, and how do we define one? And it said an Arab can be defined as a member of a Semitic people. So Semitic being a race or a certain group of individuals, like a family or a tribe. Um, let's go with race of people. So, who are the original Semitic people? Did they come from Africa, or were they originally white slash Arab Semitics? Now we know all of the world's civilizations came from Africa and derived from Africa. So to come with some sort of statement to say that the the pale skin Arab, I guess, was here first would be I guess, a stupid statement to make. And you know we can't go the other way around. So where did they move to and from? Obviously, we just clarified they moved from Africa into the Arabia Peninsula, as we can see here in this um, image here. They moved into Yemen and then Oman, and then they moved on. So they mostly started their darkest here, and then as they went on, they most likely went more and more pale because of the, I guess, neighboring cities and who were living there at the time also. But also, mind you, these areas were still engulfed with melanated people. It wasn't as populated with, I guess, pale skinned Arabs as before. The more you go up north, so north is where you find the more pale skinned Arabs. Not necessarily Arabs, but pale skinned individuals. So now let's move on. What is the origin of the Arab language? Now, we know Hebrew people are Semitic and we know Arab people are Semitic. So in the past, they were of one race. These individuals of maybe two different faiths, we knew they were from the same race. And we know that Semitic people can be traced back to the Prophet Noah in all religious texts, whether it be the Torah and the Bible and the Quran. Precise resemblance in language. So yet again, this is how we know the Hebrews, who are Semites, and the Arabs, who are Semites, are closely linked and related. So now the Hebrew name for this is the letter would be Aleph. In Arabic, this would be Aleph. In Hebrew, this would be Bet. In Arabic, this would be Ba. In Hebrew, this would be Jamel. In Arabic, this would be Jem. In Hebrew, this would be Daleh. In Arabic, this would be Dal. In Hebrew, this would be He. In Arabic, this would be Ha. In Hebrew, this would be Vav. In Arabic, this would be Wow. So you can see the correlation and so on, especially when it starts getting into stuff like Hebrew Nun, in Arabic Nun, Hebrew Mem, in Arabic Mim. You can see Lamed, Lam, Ain, Ain. So you can see they were closely linked. These were a tribe of people, and you can see here on this right-hand side image that these were the countries that were speaking Semitic languages. And we know around this time, especially the date it goes back to, I'm not 100% sure where it dates back to, but it's saying that the East Semitic languages are now extinct. So we can see how far back it goes. So we know people in this region migrated and moved on, especially with the Semitic language, and prospered. So, and also we know people of Africa were mostly melanated people. So that, I guess, the pale skin Arab is not even in the picture yet. We're just trying to unpack the brainwashing of Arab worship, because now we're breaking down what it means to be Arab. And Arab is not necessarily, or should I say, yeah, is of Semite origin. And we know the Semites originated in Africa first, and not the other way around, especially with the Hebrews and other countries that have Semite etymologies, or Semite autonomies, or Semite genealogies. Do you understand? And had similar cultures with either the Hebrews or the Arabs, because now we know these are closely linked. So let's not get that confused, and let's move on and gain a bit more clarity on which direction we're going, and how there's this Arab worship mentality. And when I say Arab worship, I'm talking about the pale skin Arab. It's like especially in religious texts, we're meant to, I guess, covertly admire those who have paler skins, whether it be the Jews, the Jewish, or the Israelis, or the pale skin Arabs. So now let's move on and answer some crucial questions. So the identity of the original Arab in modern day, like how can we locate these people? So I've done some research and come to this conclusion. The only real pure Arabs in this world are the Arabs of Yemen and Socotra. Again, locating more in this region right here. As you can see in this region here. In Yemen and Socotra is that island there. So this region is where the original Arabs reside in till till this current day, genealogy wise. The rest are mixed with other groups. Even Saudi Arabia itself isn't fully Arabic, as you would imagine. They are the only people in the world carrying the basal form of Y-DNA haplogroup J, talking about the Yemeni and the Socotra people. So now, this haplogroup J is commonly thought of as the Arab or Semitic haplogroup. So now if we look at the percentage in Socotra people, it's 85.7%. In the Yemeni people, it's 82.3%. In the people in Qatar, they have 66.7%. So as you go and spread, I guess the essence is decreased or I guess diluted. So now when we get into Saudi Arabia, it's 58%. So the more we get into these regions and going up and going up and going up, or even here, you know, as they migrate, it gets less and less from the original because we know the original came from Africa, somewhere around this region. So now we know the original Arabs are people of melanated origin. Original Arabs, now we know, are of melanated origin. This is something I guess your pale skin Arabs won't tell you, or your modern Arabs won't tell you. This is something that was hidden throughout history. They don't show this in none of their documentaries. They don't document none of their history. They don't document none of the prehistoric Arabic, the ones that date even modern Arabic in the form of language. So you have to really dig deep in order to find this type of knowledge and information and know that I guess the modern day Arab has no ownership of even the title Arab, even the language Arab, even the culture of Arab. So I don't know why we as people of African descent or people from I guess all over the world, ideology wise or our mindset wise, believe that we need to look up to an Arab and automatically assume an Arab is someone of pale skin. Well, we now know the original Arabs were black melanated people who originated from Africa, who brought their culture from Africa into the Arab Peninsula. Now let's move on, because now we've identified that fact. Okay, how were the modern day Arabs whitened? Hajar, the wife of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, an African black woman, the mother of Adani Arabs. So now the word Adani, even if we break it down, let me just see if I can. What does Adani mean in Arabic? Okay. So now let me come back. It said Hajar, wife of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, an African black woman, is the mother of Adani Arabs. Arab genealogy tradition holds that the Adanites are Arabized Arabs, descendant from Adnan. The Adanites became Arabized when they migrated to the Arabian Peninsula, where the Khattanites of southern Arabia, Yemen, are the pure Arabs, again proving why Arabs originated from black Arabs. So I guess Adani is more like, because I'm kind of, when I translate that word Adani in Somali, it means whitey. So I was seeing if I could get some correlation before when I pulled up the Google and to see if it meant something similar in, I guess, in English. But over here again, we can see that their genealogy, that the Arabized Arabs descended from Adnan, and the Adanites became Arabized when they migrated to the Arabian Peninsula, where the Khatanites of southern Arabia, Yemen, are the pure Arabs. So now, this makes me ask a crucial question, especially when it comes to religion, because when we think of religion and when we think of prophets, we tend to believe that, I guess, a pale skin comes to mind, especially when it comes to prophets. For example, I was having a discussion with a few of my Somali brothers, and I mentioned there's a high possibility that most of the prophets were African, of African descent. And one of the brothers were like, Astaghfirullah, how can you say such a thing? You see, it's that type of ideology that I'm trying to conquer, because this is an Arab worshipping ideology. How can you say Astaghfirullah for me even referring to any of the prophets as black? Because he had so much self-hate, and he couldn't even believe that the prophets, even though with their abilities and honor, he couldn't see them as being someone of the same complexion. It was almost a sin for him to see it in that way. So hence why I made a lecture like this, because I think that type of mentality is based off ignorance and self-hatred, which is, why this lecture is for, and it comes from that Arab worshipping mentality. It makes you feel less than, like you're not of the same respect because of your skin code, because of your skin color, should I say. So now I'm going to put on a video because I have a question. How many of the prophets were melanated and of African descent, and why do we assume they are white or Arab? So now I'm going to put on this video, and hopefully you guys can resonate with it, and it gets you to the right train of thought. So let's get on with it. Hopefully
money is essential to everything. As Muslims, we shouldn't be broke. Hey, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. My name is Uthman, I'm 25. Were there black prophets from the ones that were mentioned to us? And we will find actually a few. One of them, historically speaking, is Sulaiman alayhi salam. Sulaiman alayhi salam is biblically described as having dark skin. Bani Israel, they had various colors, historically speaking. Why? Because their origins were different. Some of them had Arabic origins, some of them had some Egyptian origin, and so on and so forth. Rasulullah comes from the lineage of a black woman. Who is that woman? Hajar alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam, the man who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to directly, Kalimullah, the man who the Quran speaks about more than any other human being in history, subhanallah, Musa alayhi salam. The Prophet did not just say that he was black. He said that Musa alayhi salam, when I saw him, he resembled the people of Az-Zut or Shanu'ah, the two darkest tribes amongst the Arabs. So the Prophet said Musa alayhi salam had the blackest skin. He was not part of the problem with Hollywood imagery. Like, Musa alayhi salam does not look like Christian Bale. Right? He doesn't look like, in even the older movie, The Ten Commandments, right? There is no man, subhanAllah, that is praised more in the Quran, spoken about more in the Quran than him. So if you have a problem with people who have darker skin, you have a problem with Musa alayhi salam, then you have a serious problem with the Quran, and you have a serious problem with faith altogether. So subhanAllah, how can a racist be a Muslim then? How can a racist be a believer? How can a racist say he loves the Quran? Now, the prophet who you have the most controversy about always in history is Jesus alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam. His image has been politicized throughout history. Even the earliest days of Christianity after the Apostle Paul, the image that Jesus assumed depended on the culture that Paul was reaching. To the Persians, looked like Mithras. He looked exactly like their Persian gods. To the Romans, he looked like their Roman gods. To the Egyptians, he looked like the Egyptian gods. To the Indians, some of the Hindus actually said that Isa alayhi salam was an incarnation of the Lord Vishnu. So they portrayed him as a carnation of the Lord Vishnu. What does Jesus, peace be upon him, look like? Interestingly enough, we find a disagreement amongst the Sahaba themselves. So we find a few ahadith. One of them is from Ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And this is the authentic hadith that the Prophet ﷺ says that while I was sleeping at the Kaaba, I saw a dark man who is the most handsome of dark men that you have ever seen. He's praising the beauty of Isa alayhi salam. He said he had hair that was reaching to between his ears and his shoulders, like the most beautiful of hair that you've ever seen. He combed his hair and water was dripping from his hair, and he was leaning on two men who were doing tawaf around the Kaaba. So I asked, I said, Man hadha, who is this? So they said, this is Al-Masih ibn Maryam. Then I saw a man with wiry hair and who was blind in his right eye, as if it was a floating grape. And I said, who is this? And they said, this is Al-Masih ad-Dajjal. This is the Antichrist. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, though, he has a narration where the Prophet ﷺ says, I saw Musa, Isa, and Ibrahim alayhim salam. And Isa alayhi salam was of a red complexion, curly hair, and a broad chest.
Ibrahim was
Musa alayhi salam was of a dark complexion, straight hair, and a tall stature, as if he was of the people of the Zut. Ibn Mas'ud's narration says that the Prophet ﷺ spoke about the Al-Masih ad-Dajjal in front of the people, and he said, Allah is not one-eyed, while a Dajjal is blind in the right eye. Why? Because Dajjal will claim to be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he said, Allah is not one-eyed, a Dajjal is blind in the right eye, and he said his eye looks like a rotten grape. Then he said, while I was sleeping near the Kaaba last night, I had dark skin, which would be more historically accurate, but it doesn't matter. That's the point here. It was a non-factor, and it's part of the wisdom of not portraying the Prophet. Ibn Manzur, he says that Hajar, Musa, Isa, and Adam alayhi salam, because Adam means dark, actually in the Arabic language. That's how the Arabs used to describe
Prophet
dark skin.
Of melanated origin.
Did not care to ask much about this, and this is very significant because if you look at the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, they used to have prophets that Allah did not mention.
Okay. So now I just want to get back into the question I had initially, which was, how many of the prophets were melanated and of African descent, and why do we assume they are white or Arab? Now, the brother just mentioned a few prophets, peace be upon them all, but I got a question for all you guys. So now we know Adam was someone of melanated origin, but over here you can see they depict him someone of pale skin. I don't know how that's possible. We know that's a deception. Okay, so Adam had to been someone of melanated origin. So was Idris. So was Prophet Noah. So was Prophet Hud. Coming all the way back down to Prophet Isa or Jesus. Because the brother just confirmed it. And it's pretty much confirmed in all texts that Prophet Isa or Prophet Jesus is someone of melanated origin. So where would Prophet Muhammad ﷺ get his roots from? Would it be pale skin Arabs, or would it be the melanated people at the time, the melanated Arabs at the time? Just a question, because the brother I was talking to at the time, you know, when he kind of dismissed me and said, you don't know what you're talking about. The thing is, he didn't know what he was talking about. Because in his ignorant mind, he assumed he was less than a white Arab. He couldn't even see the correlation. It was beyond him. He didn't know nothing else, making him an Arab worshipper. Do you understand my point? This is where the Arab worship mentality comes from. So now let's move on. Different races from the north of Arabia settled in, who had lighter complexions, and ultimately conquering the region through political and religious wars, bribery, and slavery, as history has shown. If you want to do more research on that, you can do more research, but that region was, I guess, conquered many times from many different empires through political and religious wars, bribery, and slavery. The winners of wars rewrite history in their image, i.e., hearsay attributed to prophets relating to their complexions, variations of religious sources outside of the main three religious texts, Torah, Bible, Quran. Now we know for a fact that racism and discrimination is still prevalent in Arab culture. Even pre-Islamic times, there was still a slave trade going on. But I guess now in modern days, it's more covert and subtle in I guess mainstream society, in mainstream Arab society. But it's still promoted through culture and media. And the misconception of whiteness is still prevalent, meaning white is holy and black is evil. This ideology is prevalent throughout the world, whether you're in China, in the West, in Europe, in South America, it don't matter. This is just a propaganda agenda that was spread worldwide, regardless of religion. So let's not forget this, and let's not act like there's not an agenda going on. Just like when I pulled up the Adam, the first prophet, the first man on earth, they depict him as someone white. Now, this is most likely in the Christian text or, the Western society text, but you get my point. It's still prevalent in the Arab society, where they try and reframe prophets in their type of complexion or their type of culture. But like I said, we now know who the Arabs are, where they originated from, and what their culture was, and how their language is very similar to the Hebrew language. So now let's move on. Now we can see there's been a whitewashing throughout history, even going back into Kemet, ancient Kemet, where they get excavation, and then they, make them pale Arabs. Even in modern media, they'll make the Egyptians seem more pale skin, even though they were of African origin, melanated people, melanated culture. But then they will still try and rebrand it into this the misconception of whiteness, I like to call it, meaning, white is holy, black is evil. The two sides of the polarity. They don't give you a balance and show you the truth. So yeah, and you can see here, this is the original Arab, melanated origin, and this is the modern day Arab that I guess you're believed to worship. And when I say worship, I don't mean like bow down to, but unconsciously follow and assume is an authority. That's what I mean by, I guess, worship in this case, because it's an ideology. Let's not forget that. So yeah, let's move on. As you can see, throughout history, it's been, history has shown us, and it repeats, that the darker you are, your history will get removed and diluted and hidden from you and your future lineage. But those who seek objective truth, seek an open mind, and understand fact from fiction and discern, can ultimately come to the objective truth and will always find it. So now we are coming to that, and we're breaking this type of ideology down, because I guess especially in, I guess, the Muslim community, you assume automatically that, and I guess this is the next point I'm going to get into, because it's the gatekeepers of Islam. For some reason, Arabs were meant to believe that Arabs have this monopoly over Islam and they own it. The Arab people. So, but then who gave them permission to have ownership over Islam? Is it because it was in their language? But we now know that the language of the Quran predates the modern language of Arabic. So, and we know the original Arabs were people of melanated origin. So who gave them this type of ownership over such glorious religions? Do you feel what I'm trying to say? So now let's go into it. The gatekeepers of Islam. These are just some questions and, I guess, ideologies that are, I guess, frequently asked questions or frequently said things in Islam partake into the Arab worship ideology. You will never understand the Quran unless you know Arabic. Now, how I counter this is the Quran was brought down in the language of the people at the time, and the Quran states this clearly. However, it is a message for mankind, not just for Arab people. Especially when Quran's Arabic predates modern Arabic language. This is true, meaning even the modern day Arabs had to translate it. So there's nothing wrong with trying to translate it into one's own language, whether it be Brazilian, whether it be Chinese, whether it be Japanese. So they'll say, you know, you never understand the Quran unless you speak Arabic, which is true in a sense because that's the source of the language. So to understand the source of the language is one thing, but to understand the message, you can always translate the message from the original source and learn the original source to understand it even further. So this is a misconception, and let's stop this. You can still get the consistent message in the Quran regardless of the translation. This is a type of ideology they try to promote, coming back again to Arab worship, or should I say the Arab worship ideology or the mentality. So now let's move on. You must go to an Arab teacher for the proper tafsir of the Quran. The Quran states, this is my reply to that, because you hear this a lot. You must go to an Arab teacher or an Arab scholar or some sort of an Arab for the proper translation. Tafsir is nothing more but translation. And translation is just an I guess tafsir is someone else's interpretation of the translation. Someone else's interpretation of the translation. So an interpretation is just someone's point of view of the translation. So you can always seek your own perspective on the Quran. You don't always have to seek, quote unquote, an Arab teacher or an Arab imam or an Arab scholar. You can always learn it yourself and use your intellect, because the Quran states it is easy, complete, perfect, and challenges you to use your intellect to understand it and comprehend it and feel it wholeheartedly. You don't need anything outside of yourself to have that type of experience with the Holy Quran. So this is a misconception, and again, it ties back to the Arab worship mentality. Let's move on. Another misconception, you must follow hadith, the hearsay of Arab men, for your Islam to be complete. Now, popular to country, I guess, how do I say? It's common understanding in Islam, or should I say Sunni Islam or mainstream Islam, that you have to follow the hadith. However, the Quran does not state that you should follow hadith. Hadith is nothing more than the hearsay of Arab men written approximately 200 to 300 years after the Prophet's death. And these words is not necessarily what the Prophet said, but words attributed to the Prophet, meaning other people said the Prophet said this. It's not word for word exact. Otherwise, there would have not been no contradictions in the hadith. And we now know there's many contradictions. And they'll promote this type of ideology where there's a science to it. But coming back to the Holy Quran does not state word for word that we should follow hadith. Only people that tell you that you should be following hadith is Arab men. Hence why it came from pale-skinned Arab men. They say it's a science, but do your research, break it down, understand objective truth, and you will know there's nothing divine about the hadith, and it's based on hearsay. Especially when the Quran states which this book is fully complete. Which book after this, or which hadith after this would they rely on? So this whole concept is what I like to call Islam 2.0. It's similar to the extensions of the Torah, similar to the extensions of the Bible. These type of tactics and mind games were used as political leverage in order to control the masses of the time. So, like I said, these are words attributed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and people try and convince you in other ways. Like I said, do your research. Me personally, I don't follow hadith. I follow strictly Quran. But then also there's a misconception because they believe and say that if you deny the hadith, then you deny the Prophet, which is wrong because the Prophet has nothing to do with hadith. It's just words attributed to the Prophet. So if I accept the Quran, I accept the Quran, I accept my Creator, and I accept the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You can't separate that. You can't separate that. It don't work that way. In order for me to have gotten the Quran, received the Quran, it came from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Not that it's like, yeah. So they'll use these claims, you're denying the Prophet, your Islam is not complete. But these are just nothing more than mind games and fear mongering tactics in order for you to have this Arab worship mentality. Because the hadith is just based on, I guess, Arab culture 200, 300 years after the Prophet's death. Especially, they also say that the hadiths were written during the Prophet's time, but if you look into the hadiths, the Prophet does not give them permission to even write hadith. So what makes you think that he gave them permission 200-300 years after he passed away? So you can see these political games and I guess how they are hoodwinking you and bamboozling you in a sense. So now again, movies and photos depicting the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam from different Islamic political sects. We've seen this. I don't have to show you this. You can Google this. There's been different movies and photos depicting the Prophet, even though in Islam is I guess how do I say, forbidden to have any photos of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. However, these Islamic political sects from different countries have still went about it. Some, not depicting him, some attempted to depict him, etc., etc. So you can see the games that's being played, and most likely they're not. They're gonna depict him in their image. You understand? Same thing with the hadith. They're gonna, I guess, attribute things to him from pertaining to them, whether it be complexion, etc., etc. So yeah, and I definitely advise you to do more research on this field here because it's an ideology, and it's the same with the priest and the imam and the rabbi. It's this type of ideology where, and when I say these names, you most likely think of pale-skinned people because these people then become gatekeepers between you and your creator, which is never the case. Your creator is the direct source of all things, so you don't need a gatekeeper. You should use your intellect to find objective truth and come to your own conclusions, especially when it's pertaining to objective truth. Now let's move on. So this Arab worship mentality is what I aim to destroy in this lecture because it's a same thing, slave and master relationship. Slave and master relationship. Now we know Arabs are not indifferent to the slave and master relationship, since we know throughout history, even pre-Islamic times, that they were partaking in slavery. So they already have this type of slave master mentality ingrained in the society already. So, and it's aimed at more people with darker skin or melanin origin. So this inferior mindset, unworthiness to seek knowledge, always relying on gatekeepers, pale skin gatekeepers, to give us direction in our religious quests to find more knowledge and be better people and improve our way of life. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states all men were created equal. Why is this not the case in modern day Islamic states? Now we can see in modern days Islam and Islamic states, whether it be UAE, whether it be Saudi Arabia, whether it be Yemen, whether it be Libya, whether it be Syria, etc., etc. These countries don't even help each other out. I thought Islam was one ummah. I thought it was based on brotherhood. But now, when it comes to politics, we see the friction and the conflicts and the abandonment of the, I guess, the believers or the Muslim people. Because once you're Muslim, it's like a brotherhood. It's almost like a love for all things, and it should be an equality and fairness and justice and honor. But as we see in modern times, especially with the pale-skinned Arabs, that's not the case. It's based on deception and political leverage and oil and money and clout and all these things. However, what they'll do is put these pale-skinned wannabe teachers with big beards and give them a title and say these are the people you have to follow in order for you to be complete and being one with your Lord, which is further from the case. And even though these things are not said up right in your face, it's subtle. It's subtle in Arab culture, and it's been subtle throughout history, but it's all political based. You understand? So this type of ideology is just simply basing your reality on fiction instead of objective truth. Not an Arab man's perspective and not an Arab man's subjective experience, but objective truth. Separating and discerning fact from fiction. Because if an Arab man said it, especially if he's got a big beard and he's wearing some sort of Arab costume, then he has to be right. For some reason, this is what people tend to believe, and it's based on ignorance, see? And it ultimately leads to confusion, uncertainty, and ignorance. Because you're unsure, therefore you're seeking more knowledge from I guess, the gatekeepers, the Arab gatekeepers. The people of African origin need to know 100% that you don't need a gatekeeper to connect with your creator. You can seek truth, you have intellect, you have the abilities to learn, just like any other Arab person learned about the Quran or the Torah or the Bible, whatever religion, or all three. The more the better, the more knowledge you have, the better. But they won't tell you even to look into the other books, even though in the Quran it confirms the other books. Because then in hadiths and other, I guess, external religious texts, they'll tell you there's a separation. They don't tell you about the unity. They don't tell you about the consistent messages in these books. But then it comes back to, I guess, politics and leverage and deception. Ultimately, for one's own race and survival. This is the way it's always been throughout history when it comes to African history and, I guess, the whitewashing of it. And they won't tell you, like I said, they won't tell you how all these books link up, these religious texts link up, and how and what the consistent message is. Because, like I said, Hebrew and Arabic were once one language. We can see from how closely they're related, being both of Semitic origin. But like I said, this is nothing they will tell you, and ultimately this leads to identity crisis. That brother that told me I shouldn't be saying that the prophets could be of African origin. He's having an identity crisis. I called him a coon because he's unconsciously and subconsciously worshipping Arab culture and Arab man. He thinks he's an Arab. He don't know nothing else. An Arab has to be right if he told him the prophets were white or of pale skin. So me questioning an Arab was already a sin. You see the cognitive dissonance. So and his point of view wasn't even based on truth or nothing. It's just the fact that an Arab person told him, therefore he ran with it. So now where's this ultimately leading to? Where's this ultimately leading to? My point in this lecture is no race has ownership over knowledge and objective truth. No one can claim that that's divine, um, I guess, divine intervention. It belongs to the creator. We just need to embrace it, seek it, and know that there's no gatekeepers. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck. We're going to be stagnant. We can't be able to breathe. We're not one with nature no more. We'll be divided even more. This will be one sect, Sunni sect. This will be a Sufi sect. This will be a Shia sect. This will be another sect. And therefore, we can't expand. We won't be able to expand. But this is ultimately what they want. Different political groups, different sects, different ideologies of one being a slave, one being a master. Even though people of justice, people of truth, people of knowledge, they always seek equality in all things and harmony. That's the way of Ma'at, of the ancient Egyptians, one of balance. As you can see, even in Islam, there's no balance in modern day, leading up to modern day. However, when you get into the religious texts and find the consistent messages in these books, then you'll be at balance, in harmony, at peace, and at one with your creator, without no gatekeepers, and defeating all ideologies that makes you believe you're inferior to another man. Because we all know it's still prevalent in modern day. So let's get right, let's empower ourselves, let's seek the right knowledge, and know we are capable. Know we do have the intellect. Know we do have the power. Know that we are potent in our ability and our potential. And we don't need no, I guess, quote unquote, Arab man to tell us how to live our lives. You understand what I mean? Dig deeper. Dig deeper. Don't let people question everything. Ultimately, you want to question everything. If you can't question anything you've been taught, then ultimately you're a slave. This is what I keep saying to people. So that brother that said to me, that made it seem like it's a sin for me to refer to the prophets as melanated African people, is a coon. He don't know nothing else. He has an idea, but he doesn't know how to express it, because expressing it would mean he's defying his Arab worship mentality. So he doesn't know nothing else. He doesn't know how to seek empowerment. And I'm going to call that brother out right now. Khalid, I see you. The reason you're dismissive and disrespectful towards me is because of your Arab worship mentality. You know where I was going, but you didn't want to defy your Arab worship mentality. So you knew nothing else but to be disrespectful and dismissive. Your own brother, same ethnicity, but yet you would choose to side with an Arab. And to me, that's a coon. So we must move on. We must be more empowered. We must be more organized, and not just talking about clans and politics and religion all day. We need to start seeing the perspective from a bird's eye view and tackling it down and empowering my people, but also the whole African people worldwide, and ultimately all of mankind, with objective truth, not based on propaganda and the whitewashing of culture and language and religion. I don't think you guys are ready for this type of talks. Once again, I want to give a big shout out to Maya Mia, a big shout out to Maverick X, a big shout out to Brother A Somali. And yeah, I'm just going to keep rocking like this, keep breaking it down, because once again, they're trying to divide us in different sects, whether from religion, whether it be from a political stance. We never see no unity in the modern world. Everything's a division, and it's like that purposefully. It's engineered like that purposefully. So when we when we get back into everything, and we start empowering ourselves, seeking the right knowledge, seeking objective truth, studying, you know, building up our self-confidence, building up our tolerance for an open mind, then we're going to get places. We're going to be so potent. And potency is what's needed to be effective in this life. But people don't know that. People are still stuck in their Arab worshipping ways, unconsciously, some even consciously. Those that are conscious of it and propagate it, those are my enemies. I just want to make that clear. I go by Pharaoh Fresh. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. I hope it's been productive. And yeah, before I even close off, I want to read one chapter. It's a book I've been reading. It's called 33 Strategies of War. So just a little excerpt. It says, declare war on your enemies. The polarity strategy. Life is endless battle and conflict, and you cannot fight effectively unless you can identify your enemies. Learn to smoke out your enemies, to spot them by the signs and patterns that reveal hostility. Then, once you have them in your sights, inwardly declare war. Your enemies can fill you with purpose and direction. So ultimately, when I was reading that book, is what led me to this lecture, due to my disputes of the brother who was of my ethnicity, who was worshipping an Arab, and his Arab mentality, Arab worship mentality, should I say. So people like that in my community, of the African community, or people of, I guess, worldwide, who believe that they need to be of a different race in order to be accepted by another race. Those are the type of ideologies I want to break down. There's nothing wrong with being pale-skinned or being white. I'm just saying, if you're someone melanated, if you're someone who's African, there's nothing wrong with being melanated and African, because you are the source of all things. And anyone who denies that is just basing their conversation on theory and nothing objective. So on that note, family, I send you peace, I send you love, I send you encouragement, I send you courage, and I stand in justice, I stand for honor, I stand for unity, and I hope you enjoy this lecture. I go by Pharaoh Fresh. Stay blessed.